Welcome to Tracking the Cats. I'm Bob Saban. I got Steve White next to me, and he's sitting next to women's basketball coach at Western Carolina, Jonathan Sipsis, sorry, and they've got a very interesting conversation that they're getting ready to have. Steve, I coach. I'm got a little bit of strep going on, not feeling great, under the weather today. So I'm going to let you take it over and run this thing, and I will see everybody next time. But looking forward to hearing what Coach has.
Well, that's great, Bob. Coach Tsipis joining us, our head women's basketball coach, and off to a great start. I'll tell you, Coach, I go back probably 60 years with Western Carolina women's basketball. I guess it was around my sophomore year, junior year, that we actually started our basketball program here at Western Carolina with Coach Betty Westmoreland. And some interesting players at that time, people like Norlin Finch, who went on to become the head of the NCAA women's basketball tournament, his first ever chairman. Mm-hmm. And then Judy Stroud, who became one of the top officials, has actually refereed the NCAA championship tournament, and of course has been the head of Southern Conference basketball officials and several other leagues. So we had some real pioneers in those days for women's basketball. And I don't know if you know this one or not, but 1971, we hosted the women's national basketball championship tournament. I did not. It was called the National Invitational Women's Intercollegiate Basketball Tournament. Okay. We call it NIBWIT. But it was played here during the winter break, between the winter and spring break, Western. In March of 71, 16 teams from all over the nation came in, from as far away as UC Davis in California, Queens out of New York, Westchester State actually won that tournament. Okay. Kansas was here, Mississippi State, like I say, 16 teams. Unfortunately, Western Carolina only won one game in the tournament, but we got quite a reputation for that. And I say at that time, Western was one of the, probably in the Carolinas, was the top women's basketball program at that time. And of course, at that time, Carolina and Duke State were not funding basketball programs. Sure. Tennessee came along a little later. The early years, we used to beat Tennessee, believe it or not, and Kentucky. So that gives you just a little bit background, but we want to welcome you. You're new to us, but you're sure not new to women's basketball. 27 years of experience, mostly on the NCAA major level, head coaching positions at Wisconsin and at George Washington, associate head coach at Notre Dame. But you do have a North Carolina background, which is really exciting. Graduate of UNC Chapel Hill, coaching stops with the men's programs at Greensboro and Elon, and even with Coach K there at Duke University. Coach, just with all of this background, all of your experience, just what attracted you to Western Carolina?
Well, I think North Carolina is home in a lot of ways. That's where I finished my last 2 years of high school. And as you mentioned, went to UNC Chapel Hill. I met my wife in pharmacy school there. Our oldest daughter is a junior right now, studying business at Chapel Hill. And then I have my sister kind of started the migration from Ohio, but I have a sister and a brother who live in the Triangle area with their families. So, to me, the opportunity, I think, to be back in North Carolina was something that when the Western job opened. And I think the most important thing was, there was a very basketball-centric athletic director in Alex Gary. And, I think with that, knowing that he is serving, continues to serve on the women's basketball tournament selection committee. And there's some people that I've had a chance to work with at Notre Dame and some various other places who served on the committee with him. It was just kind of, we were able to match up in that way. And, I can remember, in my time at Notre Dame when, Kelly Harper had turned this program here at Western Carolina and the level of success they had, in the Southern Conference with championships and obviously NCAA tournament play. But then I know it hadn't been to that level. And, I think I've been at different places. And, the two things that I think that seem to be common thread is when basketball has some sort of tradition, even if it's leveled off a little bit, but also having an athletic department that supports basketball. My time at George Washington was amazing. I got there in a similar time when the program was down a little bit, but had great tradition with Joe McEwen and NCAA tournaments, and in a place where I think it was attractive and the placement in the league And we were able to get back to that level of championships and going to the NCAA tournaments. And then even my stop at Wisconsin as a whole has had a very successful athletic department, but women's basketball hasn't been in that same place. So I saw the difference definitely after spending time at Notre Dame, and that difference between Wisconsin, was out for a year and then had a chance to go back and work with one of my former players on staff at Marquette. But when this opened and after my first meeting, and I could see what the vision that not only Alex had, but Kyle Pfeiffer and Ashley Simmons being a former women's college basketball player, I really felt like you had kind of three people right there that I could lean on as if I was offered the position to be able to build the program back up.
I understand that. Lady Catamounts are 10-5 going into the Southern Conference schedule against Chattanooga here Thursday. That's the best pre-conference record of any Southern Conference team at this time, and our most wins in 10 seasons, and that wasn't even not even anywhere near a complete season yet. An eye-opening turnaround, Coach. How did this happen? I know it's hard to break that down, but just some little things that we're able to implement or that you saw and you could adjust it, and it's happened.
I think this being the third time that I've had an opportunity to be a head coach, there are certain things that as you take over a program that have worked well, and then maybe there's some things that haven't worked the way that you had hoped. And I think you learn a little bit. I was really lucky to start at a place like George Washington. Some of those things didn't work the same way at Wisconsin. So I think the biggest thing is how you build your relationships. And that was one thing in the spring for me, is to have as many one-on-one sit downs with the players, figure out that roster on who really wanted to be here and would be willing to put the work in that we thought to help us be, more competitive. And then the young women that we were able to bring in, I think the second thing is the self-awareness. And I think that's one thing that you gain knowledge of as you get older, of what you are and what your strengths are, but more importantly, maybe what your weaknesses are. And I knew, I was kind of the old person in the room. And I was lucky enough. I've recruited some great players who actually didn't end up coming to George Washington or Wisconsin. Danielle Roush was one of them. And so I'm really lucky with the staff that I'm hired. They've made amazing relationships with our players as well. And I'm high energy. I need high energy staff. And, we're really fortunate to gain two people through the transfer portal. And without having a freshman class, be able to get two players late in Taj Hunter and Kennedy Hilsenroth. But to build that chemistry, we were able to have our whole team here the whole summer. And I think you have to be able to do that day by day, and the kids trusting you and believing in you, but also making sure you identify and the confidence you have in them.
That's great. Shooting percentages are up, turnovers are down, defensive numbers are better. Any of those areas that are special to you, what do you emphasize? Are you an offensive coach, defensive coach?
Yeah,
you got to be both.
Well, it's funny. If you had to ask me one over the other, I would say I'm more of a defensive coach. But I think our statistics show, we've been able to score the ball. We're shooting it well. We lead the Southern Conference in both those areas. Are in the top 50 nationally. I just feel like you have to find different ways to win games. And in conference play, the ball's not going to go in every night, especially on the road. And you've got to be good defensively and rebound it. The one area I've been really happy with, I think, is the tempo we've been able to set. We like to play fast. We like to get out and score in transition. I think we have a lot of different threats. And I think some of those have changed throughout these first 15 games. Jada Burston was coming off the bench and doing a great job coming off the bench early on because, Kinde Abasui was really getting us into our offense quick. Grace Pack was starting and then unfortunately had a little bit of a knee issue. And Zoe Cruz is kind of getting used to playing inside when she's played outside, on the perimeter for the first 4 years. So, I think we've been have different people step up in their roles. I think the consistency we've had is what AC Carter's brought to our program. The work ethic that Taja Beans brings every single day, practice and games alike, those consistents have been great. And then I think Chelsea Wooten kind of having that senior maturity about her of understanding like the efficiency factor we needed her to be at. But I love the fact Reagan Trum's had good games. Nicole Azar's had good games. Taj Hunter's been a great addition for us. And you see that, and then you're not just worrying about those five have to all play at a certain level. You get other people who foul trouble or injuries that have happened, sometimes I look at that and, the old school saying is injury leads to opportunity. And we've had maybe a little bit more opportunity than I would like so far through 15 games, but I think it's helped us get more people ready for the conference season.
Well, you've had only 8, maybe 9 players available for the last few games. Watching the games here, are those players that haven't been playing on their way back, like Grace Pack and so forth? Are they on their way back? What do they come the conference opener?
We'll get Taj Hunter back. Grace might still be a little bit longer, but I think having Taj, obviously we had to lean on our walk-on post player Kennedy Hilsenroth in those 2 games right after Christmas, and be able to get her some time. The good thing is we're able to play, I would say, quote, a bigger lineup, but with more of a 5-player. But we one of the things we learned early on is we're able to play smaller just because of the competitive nature with Tyja Beans and AC Carter. Don't mind guarding a post player. And then we look at it the other side is that should make those post players, would have an advantage against a typical back to the basket post player trying to guard them. So, we'll play in some different ways. We've been able to, we've had a couple of big breaks that we played so many games early, 8 games in 21 days. That we didn't get enough time. We were just into that next mode of scouting and game plan. And so that's been the great part of this break is we've gotten the 2 games in, we've gotten to work on some things and then had the week to get ready, for a Chattanooga team that comes in as the 2-time defending, or the 2-time NCAA representative, the defending tournament and regular season champion. But again, they're a team that hasn't played since the 21st. So they've had a lot of time, to prepare. But I like that we've gotten some more consistent time to work on ourselves. And definitely we're working on Chattanooga here as we go forward and getting ready for Chat and ETSU this weekend. But that's important too, because you've got to make sure you're constantly working on yourselves.
Coach, looking ahead to the Southern Conference season, I know Southern Conference competition is new to you, but how do you gauge the opposition? Maybe, again, you've touched on Chattanooga there and so forth. Maybe who you're looking at this year. I'm not sure. Since no one's played any conference games, I'm not sure who is going to be the teams to watch this year. But maybe that and the keys to being a factor this year in the league for you.
I think when you look through the other 7 teams on the women's side, you've had teams that, have gone out and played Power 5 teams. You've had teams that have played non-Division I teams. You kind of look at that core. We've had some crossover games between similar Big South opponents and trying to see their kind of understanding where some of those teams we've played are in the Big South, how they're doing so far. I think it is one of the great things, right? When you get to conference play, if you're playing great, you want to keep playing at that level and experience that type of success. If your non-conference hasn't gone the way you thought, it's that second season, right? And, with 3 new coaches in the league, obviously myself, and the coaches at Chattanooga and Mercer, like being able to tell your players, hey, like this is our record now, but like, when we walk in, people think this at Chattanooga. And we kind of want people, to keep saying like, what's going on at Western Carolina? Like something's happening there that hasn't happened in a while. But then we've got to go out and prove that. We've got to go out and play the way that we're capable of playing. We won some non-conference games by different ways. We've won games that were slugfests and games that were in the 50s or 60s, and then we've gone out and been able to be successful, and we've gotten into the 80s and obviously some of the non-Division I games. But, I think you start to see on some of those common opponents, when you get to conference play, I know for a fact that Wofford didn't have the 2-time player of the year and Rachel Rose available for first part of the year. So, you're looking to see wherever is everybody becoming healthy at this point? Did they lose some games early on because maybe they didn't have all their players? In the end, you got to prove it on the floor. And I think for us, we understand, I think, our dynamic of having versatility, being able to play fast, that people are really going to try to take that away. How great can we be in half-court offense? And then on the other end, can our defense continue to improve?
Great. Coach, do you have a message for our Catamount fans? Just something you'd like to let them know, maybe ask something of them, what have you?
Well, I think we're a great group to come watch. And, I say that, I've been here since April and I've seen, people bleed purple around here. And, I just even going over to Cherokee and seeing the success their girls team has had. I think if you watch us play, you're going to see a team that likes to play fast and exciting. We shoot threes, we put the ball on the ground. We have versatility. I think it's a group of really approachable young women that spend time with the crowd after the game, thanking people for coming. I just think to consistently say we're not anything from the past. Yeah. This is a new version of Western Carolina women's basketball, and we'd love that same support that we've seen at other sporting events, whether in the spring when I got here and saw softball and baseball support, or obviously this fall to see football and women's soccer, who obviously is the benchmark right now in the Southern Conference, as well as the volleyball team. So, two new head coaches, on the men's and women's side here, bringing new energy. I think if you've got 2 hours and you want to watch, high level basketball and exciting basketball, and we play fast, so sometimes kind of like a baseball game, you might get a ball in the crowd because we're trying to play too fast. But I think we've got a really a likable group that again, to me, as somebody who has 2 kids, it's a family atmosphere. You're going to be able to see their daughters down there one day, maybe playing for Western Carolina, or more importantly, for our game of basketball. I just think seeing the joy that our kids play with.
Well, I tell you, I've been impressed with the togetherness of this team. I really like that, the enthusiasm, and everybody. It seems like just a great team. I mean, they're urging each other on. The high-fiving, and it's exciting to watch. And just want to let everybody know, big game here Thursday with Chattanooga coming up at 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock start.
And then Saturday, a doubleheader. Was at 1:30 or
1 o'clock for our game,
Saturday
3:30
with East Tennessee State, and the men following with Mercer at 3:30. And come on out. Again, it's the crowds are not big right now because there are no students on campus. Hopefully that'll change when our students come back. But it's a great atmosphere and fun to watch. And again, want to appreciate it. Just say how much we appreciate you coming on with us and talking about women's basketball. And it's exciting, and I'm fired up, I'll tell you that.
Well, I appreciate that. And the one thing I know, Steve, in our talks, I always know I'm going to learn something from the historian. So it's good to know about that national tournament being here in 1971. Right. So,
well, thank you, Coach Jonathan Tsipis, and we are looking forward to this next 2 ball games here on campus. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.